What is going on, everybody? We are back with another review for Twilight Zone. Um, per the norm, please check the link in the description below. That'll take you over to the Patreon where you can get everything a full week earlier. So we are reviewing episode 18 of season 1 of the Twilight Zone. This is called The Last Flight. This was directed by William F. Claxton, written by Richard Matheson, and was released February 5th, 1960. Per the normal, it's an episode that I like more than almost anything Rod Serling has written. This actually ended up being a very good episode, something that I thoroughly enjoyed. To give you a quick rundown of what happened, a pilot, 1917-ish, I believe was the date that is given, is flying through a cloud, and as he goes to land, he lands on what appears to be what would be considered in the 50s, a more modern day air base in France. But it's a U.S. Army base, or U.S. Air Force base. So he lands. He basically gets corralled by the U.S. Air Force. They're confused at why he's driving this old antique of a warplane. He goes in, says that he is Lieutenant Decker. I think it was Lieutenant Decker. I could be wrong. Was that his name? Okay, yeah, I don't know. Because it doesn't say in the little quick synopsis thing that it shows up on Wikipedia. But Air Force guy mentions that he's from a specific air patrol or something along those lines that no longer exists, and the guy finally asks him what date he thinks it is. One of the guys asks him what date he thinks it is, and he's like, yeah, it's 1917. And they're like, no, it is 1959, I think is what they said. And of course the dude's like, no. And they go on to talk about like he shows them all this stuff that he has on him. They search his plane and pull out his gun and other military apparel or paraphernalia. And they eventually get into a conversation where they tell him that a specific person is showing up that was a guy that he used to fly with. He's like, there's no way. Like, he died, And they're like, well, he's on his way. And they get into this debate, and we're like, why are you so sure that you think he's dead? And he was like, he was surrounded by 7 German airplanes while I was in the process of fighting off 3 of them. And there's no way that he got away from that. So they put him in holding, and the guy goes into visit him in holding, and you find out he's like, the reason I think he's dead is I abandoned him. Like, we went on flight together, and I flew off, and he was surrounded by, because he was taking on 5 airplanes, and I was afraid of dying. I'm a coward. Like, I ran away. And, he finally tells the truth, and he talks about he's just always been a coward. He would do things where, normally the 2 of them would go out on a patrol, and they'd split up, and when they split up, he would find a spot in the sky and fly back and forth, not actually patrolling for anything, fly around long enough, and then, hopefully make his way back without running into anything. That's what he was hoping for. So the guy was like, all right, well, that didn't work out. Well, not that didn't work out, I'm sorry. The guy was like, all right. So then, finally, the guy from 1917 looks at him and is like, you know what? Maybe this is supposed to let me know that he lives. Maybe I'm supposed to go back. And the U.S. guy's like, well, you can't leave. And he's like, how do you know if I don't leave that he won't show up today? What if it's because if I don't go back, he ends up dying? And he's like, well, you're not going. So he punches that guy. A guard rushes in, he punches him. It's amazing to think that one punch knocks everybody out. He runs out, finds his plane, pulls the propeller down to start it. As he goes to climb into the plane, someone else comes out. He punches that guy, knocks him out, climbs into the plane. As he's about to fly off, the American guy catches up to him, puts a gun in his face, and it's like, if you don't get out, I'm going to pull the trigger. He's like, well, then kill me. I'd rather die anyways. And so the guy lets him go. He flies off. He's gone. Um, so then he's being reprimanded by his boss, and as they're sitting there talking, the lieutenant guy that was from the old French army or British army, that's what the guy was from, shows up, and they're like, "Hey, did you know the lieutenant, whatever his name is?" And the guy was like, "Well, yeah, we fought beside each other against the Germans." And he was like, "Well, whatever happened to him?" And the guy told him, he was like, "Well, I was surrounded. I thought he was hightailing it out of there and was leaving me to die. He disappeared." And the guy was like, "Into a white cloud?" And he's like, "Well, I suppose so." He's like, "But then he came back down and guns ablazing took out 3 of them before they got him." Which I predicted that he was going to die during all of this, by the way. So then he was like, "Well, okay. The Germans used to always, collect the belongings of the people that, they shot down, right?" And the guy was like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Did you ever get his belongings?" And he was like, "Well, no. Why?" And they pull out this envelope, and it has all the stuff that they had taken from him before he took off. And he's like, "Where did you get this?" And the guy was like, "Well, you should probably sit down and prepare you're going to want to sit down for this, old lead bottom," because that was something that other guy had as a secret nickname for him. And he looked at him and was like, "How did you know that?" And that was the end of the episode. So they implied that they were about to tell him what really happened. And this was a fun episode. So while I'm not a big fan of military-esque stories, things like this this was really well written. There was just a lot to play off of, like just so many cool little things. It was a fun time travel story. I enjoyed it. And while some of it did obviously come up to be predictable for me, the way they went about everything was just really well done. And I definitely think this is going to be high middle of the road to top of the list for me by the time the season's over. Again, I just thought it was, again, just really well done. So I had a lot of fun with it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is my review. I hope to run into more stories like this. I'm sorry I don't have like any real in-depth review to give for these things. I'm sure some people are looking for something comedic or something. Like, I basically just tell you guys the synopsis of the story, and then I'm like, I either like it or I hate it. The last episode we did, I gave a more in-depth reason on why I didn't like it. I don't really have an in-depth reason on why I like this. Other than I just thought I liked the way the story played out. It was really well acted. Everything in this show has been really well acted. I haven't had any issue with anyone's acting. At most, I might not like the fact that everyone seems to get knocked out in one punch, but that's the 70s for you. 60s, I guess, technically. Late 50s, early 60s. I don't know why I said 70s. The other show is from 79, so that's probably where that came from. But no, I'm looking forward to the next one. It's called The Purple Testament. It's another one written by Rod Serling, so we'll see how that goes. The cool thing is, so we get I record these 2 episodes at a time, basically. So it'll be like 2 episodes of the Twilight Zone, and then I'll do like 2 episodes for something else. With that being said, the next 2 episodes one is by Rod Serling, one is by Charles Belmont, which Charles Belmont has written another one, I do believe. I know he does another one later as well. Let me see. Charles did Perchance to Dream, which was one I wasn't the biggest fan of, if I remember correctly. Well, oh yeah, that was the one where the guy dreams himself into death. So we'll see how that one goes. And then we have 2 episodes back to back of Rod Serling, but then we get 2 more episodes of one's Richard Matheson, who just did the Last Flight one, and the one's Charles Belmont again. And then we get 2 more episodes that are other people that have written them, but the teleplay is done by Rod Serling. And then it looks like it's another Rod and Charles, 2 Rods. So yeah, it just some good spacing here towards the end. We went on a long, like the beginning, everything was all Rod Serling, and I was really struggling with getting into the show. But a lot of things, like I said, are starting to get better now. We are on the next one will be episode 19 of 36. So we are over halfway through now. just barely, just over halfway through. So that's exciting. Anyways, guys, that is going to do it. I love y'all. We'll see you next time.